I'm not going to say people can't change. What I will say is that it is hard work to change attitude. Changing skills, super simple. Attitude, it's a losing battle for the vast majority of business leaders.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a solid one. Our guest is a leadership expert and founder of Leadership IQ, here to talk about his new book, Team Players, The 5 Critical Roles You Need to Build a Winning Team. Mark Murphy, welcome to the show.
Michael, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is our pleasure completely. And just for the listener's sake, I was reading your bio and a little bit about you on your website, and I was like, wow, we could spend a whole podcast just giving an introduction to you. You've done so much. So maybe just give us a little snapshot of how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
So the short version is early in my career, I was doing turnaround work. So essentially, a company is going to lose $200 million or whatever. It needs to conduct some layoffs and, sell off a line of business, whatever. And I was doing that work and started studying, okay, well, do companies actually get out of turnarounds? And if so, why? And, the dirty little secret is once you enter that world of, quote unquote turnarounds, it's really hard to ever kind of reestablish the company again as like an ongoing enterprise. But the companies that did succeed, the biggest factor was just the quality of the leaders, and not just like the CEO, but like all the way down throughout the organization, the quality of the supervisors, the managers, the executives, directors, VPs, et cetera. And when they could get buy-in from their people, when they could keep people committed, when they were good, solid people who invested in their employees' success and, cared about seeing people actually grow and develop, that was the biggest predictive factor as to whether or not the company would actually succeed long-term. So after I burned out on doing all the layoff stuff, which is not super fun, said, you know what, I'm going to devote the rest of my career to just studying leaders. And that's when I founded Leadership IQ. And what we do is we go out and we study leaders and teams and organizations of all sizes, and then turn whatever we find, good, bad, or otherwise, into books and training courses and my Forbes column and whatever. And that's really the raison d'etre of what we do. Why are we here? Well, we're here to kind of study what works and what doesn't and try and bring some science and data to the conversation.
Wow. Well, it's an interesting journey. And looking at your site, lots of resources, lots of courses that you've done, attracting the brightest and best leaders from around the world. I'm really curious to know, through this journey that you've been on, what were some of the surprises that you found when you were studying all this leadership?
So there were a number of sort of shocking findings, and some have become the sort of the reason or even titles of some of my books. So for example, one was we did this study and we tracked about 20,000 new hires and discovered that everybody hires, right? And so you hire people, 46% of new hires are going to fail within 18 months. Now, fail isn't always they get fired. Sometimes, they don't get fired. They keep their job, but they're a person you would not hire again. So half of new hires, give or take, will fail. Now, other people have found that finding before. I wasn't like the shocker. The shocker was we went back and we asked every manager who hired a failed hire, and we just said, why did they fail? And the answer, 89% of the time, it was something attitudinal. It wasn't their technical skills. It's not like you hired somebody and they needed to be expert in Excel and they couldn't use Excel. Like, because that's really easy to test for. If you're interviewing somebody and you're like, they have to be able to calculate a weighted average cost of capital in Excel. Well, you hand them a laptop during the interview and go, here's some numbers, calculate a weighted average cost of capital in Excel. It's not that hard to test. What really, though, ruined the new hires and determined their failure was things like, were they coachable? Could they get feedback and actually do something with it? Did they listen? Their emotional intelligence, were they a jerk dealing with your client base, for example? Were they more motivated to get the job than to do the job? Do you have a super team-friendly team culture and they're highly individualistic? And in that case, it's not so much that they're bad or you're bad, it's just you don't fit well together. It was all of this soft, fuzzy attitudinal stuff. So the vast majority of new hires, when they fail, it has nothing to do with their technical skills and everything to do with the attitude, the role they play in your culture. Do they fit the culture? That kind of stuff. That was one kind of major aha. And that's impacted a lot of our research because what it kind of unveils is that hidden behind the numbers, in a lot of cases, we did another study on why CEOs get fired. And we interviewed board members who had fired their CEO. And we said, okay, well, we got the press release that everybody else got. Our CEOs decided, by mutual agreement to step down and blah, blah, blah. And it says nothing about like the real reason they got fired. And what we discovered was that most of the time, again, it wasn't money. It wasn't that the CEO was losing money. People say, well, CEOs get fired because they lose money. Jeff Bezos lost, how many billions of dollars a year for like 20 years? They never considered firing him. Why? Because they were bought into the vision that he was selling. And they knew it was going to take decades, but it would pay off eventually. It's not like quarterly earnings that get CEOs fired. It's things like mismanaging change or tolerating low performers, or they talk a good game, but they don't actually accomplish what they said they were going to accomplish. It's softer, fuzzier, attitudinal stuff. And that's kind of the secret of a lot of leadership is that while it's easy to look at KPIs and EBITDA and P&Ls and everything else, usually the truth is a couple of layers down that it'll show up there eventually, but that's a lagging indicator. That's what happened last year and the year before and the year before that. What predicts what's going to happen is usually the softer, fuzzier stuff.
That's a very interesting statistic on both of those fronts. 89% attitudinal. That's huge. And to use the Excel situation where you're testing for that, what have you seen the people who study the work that you do, what have you seen them do to change that behavior around the hiring?
The big issue is that number one, while you will always test for skills, I mean, that's, just table stakes. You got to have whatever you think is the minimum required skills for that position, what you are not willing to teach, basically. Now, I would tell you that a lot of the time organizations get a little too persnickety about what they will and won't teach. Like if you have a brilliant programmer who can code in C++ or Java, and you're like, well, they have experience using Azure, but they don't have experience with Hadoop. Well, that's for a really smart person, that's going to be 30 minutes for them to get up to speed on, one application versus another. That should not be your hard and fast line. But whatever, that's up to you. Once you've tested the skills, though, the number one thing you've got to do is actually ask some attitudinal interview questions. And you have to be willing to reject candidates based on attitude. So, for example, if you know that one of the things that is, let's say you look at your culture and you go, okay, we are a culture that is we're all kind of jack of all trades and everybody pitches in, and sometimes your idea will get accepted, sometimes it won't. But we're a very just creative thinking, keep tossing stuff out there. Okay, so one characteristic you might look at and say is that every new hire has to be able to handle getting their ideas rejected. Like, we're just a company that we throw out lots of ideas, and if you can't handle your idea getting rejected, you're not going to last very long here. So I might want to ask an interview question. Hey, could you tell me about a time at your previous job where your ideas got rejected? Could you tell me about a time you proposed what you thought was a great idea and your boss didn't like it? Something like that. And if they say, well, my last boss couldn't handle my ideas and they were just so much better, and that's why I left, and that's why I'm interviewing with you guys. Okay, now I know that this person is almost certainly going to fail in my environment. Doesn't mean they're a bad person overall. It just means in my world, in my little shop, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. So, and the real, the design of the interview question aside, the real test is, are you willing to not hire somebody, no matter how great their resume is, based on the vibes you're getting or the answers they're giving you, that this is not going to be a fit? In that same hiring study, roughly 86% of the time when we did kind of post hoc analyses of managers doing the interviews, around 86. So, let's just say 8 out of 10 times the manager would say, hindsight being 2020, there were warning signs in the interview that this person was probably not a fit. Why didn't you listen to your gut? Why didn't you listen to the answers they were giving you? And it's like, well, I thought I could coach them out of it. I thought I could teach them out of it. It is so much easier to teach somebody how to use Microsoft Excel than it is to teach them attitude.
That's right.
Like college. What is college for? College is for teaching skills. Like, my daughter's 21. She's in college. She uses Google Sheets. All right. So, she's fully on the Google apps. Now, how long would it take me to get her off of Google Apps and onto Microsoft Excel? I thought that was worth doing. What, 10 minutes? 20 minutes?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
She's young.
Probably less today with AI.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I think I could handle that. But how long would it take me to fundamentally change her attitude and personality? She's my daughter. I've had her for 21 years. Good luck with that. And, so it's like, that's a losing battle. But that's the thing that people think, I can coach that out of them. I can fix it. And I'm not going to say people can't change. What I will say is that it is hard work to change attitude. Changing skills, super simple. Attitude, it's a losing battle for the vast majority of business leaders.
Very interesting. With the attitude and the example of the hire, and I bring it back to our listener, they're often the ones that are doing the interviewing. Small firms, right? And so that example it's almost an art and an experience thing, and maybe a maturity thing, wisdom thing. I'm not sure which one it falls into, maybe all of them. But trusting your gut it's not cut and dried. And so I'm not surprised that it's 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 actually had the answer right clear in front of them. However, they did not act on that. I'm curious if you've done any deeper research, like what has them then act on it in the future? Is it just time and time again, being burnt, or is there some other way that they can, do that, 3 times out of 10 instead of 8 times out of 10?
So, great question. So, one big thing, and this falls under the insanely hyper practical way to fix interviews, is one of the most effective ways to do it. Make the bad answers more obvious, and the way you do that is to stop ruining your interview questions. Okay, so let me give you a real practical example. Could you tell me about a time your idea or opinion was rejected, and how did you overcome that? Okay. When I add those words to the end of the interview question, and how did you overcome that? What I have just signaled to the candidate is I only want to hear about their success stories. I have told them, I don't want to hear about your failures. I want you to tell me the way you successfully resolved it. Now, if I'm the candidate and I've had 10 times in my career where my idea or opinion was rejected, and one time I was able to successfully overcome that, what you just told me is you don't want to hear about the 9 times I got ticked off and stormed away and failed. You only want to hear about the one time that I was successful. So, number one thing you can do to be able to trust your gut more, to make the answers more obvious, stop giving away the right answer to your question. So, my rule is never ask somebody how they solved the problem. Ask them about the problem only. And people who are natural problem solvers will automatically tell you how they solved it. People who are natural problem bringers will tell you everything that went wrong. So, could you tell me about a time you made a mistake at work? Cover your mouth and stop talking. Don't ruin that interview question. Don't say, could you tell me about a time you made a mistake at work and how did you successfully resolve it? Could you tell me about a time you made a mistake at work and how you overcame that? Don't do it. Could you tell me
Wow.
about a time you made a mistake at work? Stop talking. And then some people will say, yeah, you know what? Last month I made a mistake at work. Here's what happened. I didn't double check the calculation of the spreadsheet. What I have since learned is that I go back now, and every time I run a calculation and I extend it all the way down, I go back and check for missing cells to make sure that I never, ever miss a cell again. Okay, well, you just learned that this person screwed up. Yes, everybody does. But they've since developed a process for fixing it. They overcame it. They took ownership, accountability, and, all sorts of good signs. But when somebody says, yeah, I made a mistake. There was a spreadsheet, but you know what? We were on such deadline. My boss never really gave me a heads up. It was just everything was always, it's like, well, it's tax season again. And so it's this and super intense. And what am I supposed to do? It's going to happen if you don't staff up for us. Well, then expect that mistakes are going to just happen. Well, okay. That's somebody I probably don't want on my team. But I'm
Mhm.
only going to get really terrible answers when I stop giving away the right answer to the interview question. And so that one, if every one of your listeners starts doing that, I will caution you, once you start doing it, and all of this comes from my book, Hiring for Attitude, when people read that, like when they stop me at a conference after a talk or something, they'll come up and they'll go, I did that thing where I stopped giving away the right answers. And the stuff that comes out of people's mouths is crazy. I'm like, yeah, that's my warning to you, is when you stop giving away the answers and people start telling you the truth, some people are going to share some stuff. They're going to say some things that are going to make you go, oof, that one hurt. But that's the point of this. And that's the easiest, fastest way to trust your gut more is to get answers from candidates that are so bad that it becomes obvious. And nobody in their right mind would hire this person. Now, again, some candidates are going to be awesome, but you got to reveal the bad ones.
I think our audience needs to pull out the checkbook and write you a check for that nugget. That is. That's such an interesting one. I bet if you went into every organization today, right now, that the opposite of that question is being asked.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like you in every book, in every training, in every, like, it's ringing in my head. It's always, tell us this and then what you did, and it's like, it's almost like you're like, here, here's a little spoon take a little spoon. Amazing. Love that. If everyone on this listening just did that one thing in every area of their life, quite frankly, whether it be personal, business, whatever, if you just shut your mouth after the first part of that question, wow, what could be opened up?
A woman who works for me, but she's been with me for, I don't know, 17 years or something. We've been together a long time, and she used a hiring for attitude to audition her second husband, and and they're doing
Wow.
great. She's like, so we've
Yeah.
joked. It's only half joking. I may actually do this in the next year or two, but she's like, you need to do now like hiring for attitude for dating. And I'm at that age where we've got enough friends between my wife and I that are like, we're in our 50s and enough that are in that same age bracket and divorced. And they're like, you know what? I think there might actually be
Yes.
a book here.
That's right. And then how to stand, how to not get, because I'm sure a lot of the information and knowledge that you bring through your books applies to that, relationships, right? Leadership. It's all connected, right?
It's all people.
It's all people and really interesting. But I love that question. Love when we get a nice piece of gold like that for our listener. Now, let's maybe shift gears a little bit here, and talk a little bit about your book, The 5 Critical Roles Every Winning Team Needs. What are those roles? And tell us a little bit about how this particular book came to be, and a little bit of background.
So the Team Players book is, in many respects, an extension of the Hiring for Attitude book. So with Hiring for Attitude, it was all about, okay, well, find the aspects, the characteristics, the attitudes that your company needs to succeed. So over the past 10 years, as the book has been out and people have been using it and all that, and we keep studying these organizations, one of the things that started to become really clear is when you had groups of people, that the best groups, the best teams, kind of had naturally, the best ones naturally had kind of 5 distinct characteristics that emerged on their teams. Like when you looked at a team of people, you can say, okay, well, go hire people that have the right attitude. Okay, well, what are those attitudes? Like what roles are they fulfilling on your team? On every great team, there's a director. There's somebody who is willing to make the tough decision. We've all been on teams where it's like we're trying to be real egalitarian and the group just keeps debating. And then it's like, well, maybe we need more data. I don't know, should we decide this? I don't know. We're sort of divided. And great teams don't suffer from that. They have somebody who is willing to say, okay, listen, we've debated this for 45 minutes now. Enough is enough. We got enough data debating this further isn't going to help. We've already got the data we need, make a decision. So every team, good team, has a director. Now, every good team also has a stabilizer. And the stabilizer is that person who dots the I's and crosses the T's. This is your Gantt chart, your to-do list, your schedule. It's the person who says, hey, Mark, you're getting a little off track here. Like, yeah, this is all nice and fine, but we actually got a deadline to hit here. And so you have that person who's a little bit of a taskmaster who can keep you on track. Then you have typically, in a good team, somebody who is a harmonizer. And that's the person that is kind of your EQ person, your feels person. And they're the person that they can tell when somebody's off, when they're having a rough day. They can tell when somebody is checked out of a meeting and they're, sitting with their arms crossed and, the brow is furrowed. They can pick up on that, right? And they can bring that person out of their shell. They're like a diplomat type. Then you have your achiever. The achiever, and teams will often have a bunch of these people. They're people that they don't really want to be in charge. What they want is to be told what to do and left alone to do it. Like, don't make me sit through a meeting where we're all going to discuss stuff for 45 minutes and not decide anything. Just give me an assignment and let me go do it perfectly. Just leave me be to kind of nail the work, roll up my sleeves and get stuff done. And then really good teams always have a trailblazer. And this is the person who every so often comes up with that big kind of crazy out of the box idea. They're not stuck in the past. They're looking for what's that huge innovation that might actually get us a leg up on this next thing. In today's modern companies, they're the ones who would say, what if instead of calculating every one of these returns individually, we built a prompt in AI that would allow us to actually run the numbers and calculate some of the spreads in one fell swoop? It's a little crazy. What if we tried that? And so great teams have a director, stabilizer, achiever, harmonizer, trailblazer. And when you have those 5 roles, what you find is that every piece of the work that you need to get done, there's somebody who is capable of doing it. Now, that's nice. One of the things that requires, though, is that, and I didn't get to this in Hiring for Attitude, but that's why the Team Players book was needed, is that what it requires, like for a small business, it requires an ounce of self-awareness to recognize what is the role that you, as the business owner, play, and what are the pieces that you are missing. So if I'm being brutally honest with myself about myself, for example, I am not a stabilizer. I hate being a stabilizer. And so when building my team, it was absolutely essential that I found somebody who could be the stabilizer, because if I am, working on some new book and working on some new research project, and I'm like, I'm going off to, Jamaica to give a talk for whatever conference, and I'm spinning off into the ether. I need somebody who's like, okay, Mark, we got 3 things you got to get done while you're on that plane. And they are as follows. And and be that stabilizer, be that taskmaster. But what it requires first and foremost is an honest assessment of me and which role I most enjoy playing. And it is not the stabilizer. And then a willingness to say, you know what, my team has a hole on it. And that's the thing I've got to hire for. Or if you have people already, you might look at your team and say, I've got Jill on my team and I haven't been using Jill in this way, but if I could ask Jill to be a bit more of a taskmaster, to play that stabilizer role for the group, now I've got to give her more control and allow her to take charge of that piece. But it's going to be to the betterment of the group as a whole. And so that's, if you're willing to take an honest look about the makeup of your group, what are we actually missing? Now, that actually tells you, what's the thing I need to hire for? It may not be the warm and fuzzy person. It may not be the crazy out-of-the-box innovative type. It may be more of your taskmaster. Or it may be somebody who, if you're hiring, you're like, well, I want to go-getter, super ambitious, and they just want to take charge. And you may look at your team and be like, you know what? I need kind of a quiet doer. I need somebody who doesn't want to be in charge. I need somebody who just wants to take direction and go get chunks of work done. Again, whatever it is you happen to be missing in your group. But that was kind of one of the big ahas, and how this book kind of blended from just don't hire jerks. Okay, that's a good starting point, right? Like, let's not do that. But then let's extend that one level further and go, okay, there are 5 major roles. Somebody's got to fill each one of those 5. And you can't fill them all. That's number 1. And number 2, you got to be brutally honest about which ones you can or are willing to fill, and then start fitting in the pieces accordingly.
That's a lot there. It's really interesting about it from a small business perspective, which you've completely unpacked for yourself, is that it's almost like a very different, and I'll speak from my own personal experience of, often I think a business owner thinks that they are the quarterback, or the chief, we're going to go do this, but yet every single entrepreneur has different characteristics and would fit predominantly into one of those roles. And so for a person, it would be completely incongruent for them to play that role if they're not that. They could be like, and there's probably tons of founders, tons of entrepreneurs that are that leave me alone, don't want meetings, just want to work and do the creative thing or whatever it is. And if they were trying to be anything other than that, it would just be literally a roadblock for them.
It's so great you brought that up. It's so many small business owners think that they always have to be the director. They have to be the one to, make the final call. And the truth is, there are plenty of CEOs that you don't have to make every decision. You have to ensure that decisions actually get made, but you don't have to make every decision because A, if you do, will exhaust you. B, it can end up being micromanaging. And C, most importantly, you might not be the best person to make that particular decision. One of the concepts I put forth in the book is called adaptive hierarchy. Now, hierarchies, human beings are pretty hardwired to need hierarchies, to like hierarchies, to see hierarchies everywhere. It's, how we judge. We judge hierarchies based on, what kind of car you drive or where you live or what you do. There's hierarchies everywhere. Little kids, toddlers can see hierarchies. We just respond automatically. But here's the thing. An outdated hierarchy is one person is always in charge and it's always the same person. An adaptive hierarchy, a smart hierarchy, is one that the person who's in charge is the person best suited for that task or that moment. I'll give you an example. Who's going to take the last shot at the end of a basketball game? You got 2 minutes left. 2 seconds left, right? You're going to inbound the ball. One person, you're down by 2. Somebody has to take a 3-point shot. Okay, you got your star on the court. And this actually, LeBron James gave a wonderful interview where he described this. Okay, ball comes to him, but it's LeBron James. They're all over him, right? They're guarding him. They know who's going to take that shot. Now, sometimes you're like, okay, well, we got nobody else, so that person has to take the shot. But when he was on the Miami Heat, they had this world-class 3-point shooter, Ray Allen, and he said, you know what? Ray Allen's over there. It's the last second shot, and even though I'm, quote unquote, the star, I'm at the top of the hierarchy, I make the most money, I'm the most famous, I get the most points. In this instance, I'm not the right person to take that shot because he's more open than I am, and he is every bit as good, maybe better, of a 3-point shooter than I am. I have to let go and let him go take that shot. There are going to be times in every organization, and this is critical kind of for the evolution of a business owner as well, is to recognize that not only can you not make every decision, you're not the best person to make every decision. And there are going to be decisions that you absolutely should and need to let others make, not because it's their time, not because they've been with you for a long time, but because they are the best position. They're the right role to make that decision. They're in the best position. They have the most knowledge, whatever the thing is that gives them that advantage. They're the ones that you need to back off and let them take that forward. And so, as I said, you got to make sure decisions get made. CEO, I know, and he's in the book. His name's Julian Francis, and he's CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization. And the way he put it to me, he said, Mark, I don't want to make that many decisions. My job is just to ensure that decisions get made, but don't make me make the decision unless it is a 50-50. Meaning, let's say that I work for you, Michael, and I come to you and you're playing the role of Julian, and I say, well, we got to make a decision about whether we're going to go with vendor A or vendor B. And you go, okay, well, what are you thinking? And I'm like, well, I'm 65% towards vendor A, 35% vendor B, but what do you think? I think you've already made the decision. What you're going to say to me is, hey, listen, Mark, you're 65% of the way there. Go with what your decision that you've already made that you're not willing to, you're a little afraid to take it all the way. Take it all the way. That's it. And so now you don't have to go make those decisions. You just have to nudge me to go ante up and make that decision. I already told you basically what I want to do. You may need to, kick me in the patootie a little bit every so often and go, hey, just go do it. But that's it. You don't have to make every decision. And that's again, one of the great myths for small business owners is you got to do everything. There are plenty of brilliant business owners who are like, I'm the harmonizer. I'm here to be the cheerleader, to bring peace and love and make sure everybody's getting along. But I'm not the person that, I don't want to be locked in an office just doing work and logging through spreadsheets, but neither do I want to make every hard decision. By contrast, as you pointed out, there are plenty of brilliant business owners who are like, the reason I'm good at my job is because I'm good at my job, because I'm the master of the spreadsheets and the technology and the data and whatever. Let me do that and add value that way, but let somebody else run the meetings and all that. So it's really about finding what's the way I add unique value to this company, to my company, and then fill in the pieces where I'm probably not the best. Or it's not the thing that I do best. I may still be good at it, but it's not my best thing.
I like the word that you used, an evolution of the business owner. Is that finding that way, and what this book could maybe do for some is liberate them in having a new context to go forth with, because it can open up all sorts of opportunities if that's not their default self. Even in the example of the CEO that you just mentioned, after that interaction, the 65 or the 35, it's like, okay, yeah, you already made the decision. That's training that person that, yeah, I'm right. I had the right decision. Make more decisions independently. You're better off, right? And so being able to really step back and say, well, who am I? What role do I play in this? And where's my strong suit? And then figure out a way to be in that more often than not is great. Now, we're talking about smaller teams. Sometimes you might have to be 2 or 3 of the roles if you only have, a small team. But as you grow and as you develop, I think that's really valuable for our listener to be thinking about that. I'm curious how this is, like, there's so many remote scenarios now that are happening in the world, and we haven't even touched on that at all, which would have been, huge flux in people shifting from in-office to external, from working from home remotely, and then now coming back in. How do I would say that, as big companies are saying, everybody come back, small businesses are not going to go and rush to bring people back into offices. They're going to adapt to this really efficient, powerful model. However, there's big gaps in what you're talking about, developing leaders, getting the most out of your teams. What could you share with our listener to help them perform better when these teams are remote?
Great question. So most small business, lots of small business, not most, but lots of small business owners won't force a return to office simply because they like working remotely, because they often find, as many of us do, it's kind of nice when I actually have a little more time. And I don't love commuting any more than anybody else loves commuting. And it's, it's kind of nice to be able to have some time, a little more uninterrupted time, et cetera. So one thing, though, you have to do to kind of get the benefits of kind of more team building and that can leading the group sort of feel, even when people are remote, is you just have to be more explicit about it, about the roles. So you may have to say, for example, listen, if we were in a room together and we were shooting the breeze or we were doing this over a beer, and we're just kind of brainstorming some crazy ideas about what should be a new line of business we should offer. You know what? Yeah, that stuff actually is easier when you're face to face. Okay. There was, in fact, a wonderful study done that in the United States during Prohibition, so like in the 1920s in the United States, alcohol was outlawed for a few years. And during that time, the number of patents filed went down precipitously during those couple of years. And one of the reasons was that engineers and scientists would get together at bars, and that's where they would literally, over a beer or scotch, whatever they were drinking at the time, and just, shoot the breeze, brainstorm, pie in the sky, all that crazy stuff that would lead to like actual patents and businesses and innovation. And so, I'm not making a joke when I say some of this happens over a beer. But so how do you recreate that? Well, if you look at this and you say, okay, I feel like one of the things we're missing a little bit right now is that innovation. So what I need to find that person on my team who is the most innovative, the person who is most likely to come up with those crazy brainstorming kind of, out of the box sort of ideas. And I need to take them aside and say, listen, on our next team Zoom call, I'm going to take 10 minutes and we're going to run a little brainstorming exercise. And I want to make sure that you bring to that meeting the crazy ideas you've been thinking about lately. Now, you don't have to drink a beer on the meeting, but I want to hear those crazy ideas from you. If you know that on your team meetings, people aren't as chatty as they were when they were face to face, and you feel like, we might be missing a little bit of that, camaraderie stuff that we used to have. Now, if your team doesn't like or need that stuff, that's fine too. But if they do like and need that stuff and they've been missing it, well, that's when you need to take your warm and fuzzy person on the team and go, I need you to bring some of that warmth back to our meeting. And so in our next Zoom call, tell me what you need. Do you need 10 minutes? Do you need 20 minutes? What do you need to kind of bring that out of the group? What are you thinking we should do? And what I'm going to do in each of these things that I feel like we're deficient in because we're remote, we don't see each other as much, is to just say, okay, I need a little more innovation. I need my trailblazer. I need a little more to-do list. I need my stabilizer. I need a little more of that warmth and fuzzy. I need my harmonizer. I need somebody to kind of step up a little bit, to take the lead. And so when I'm remote, I have to be more intentional and explicit about the missing parts of this, because when you're face-to-face, even though there are downsides to being face-to-face, to be sure, the one plus side is that it's easy to spot when your team is, a little bit off. It's easier to see what's going on because you're there and you can just, you can read their body language. Whereas sometimes it's harder, even though okay, we got video and all that, it's still harder to see and pick up some of those cues. And so you just have to say, Trailblazer, I need you to bring a little oomph. Harmonizer, I need you to bring a little warmth. Stabilizer, I need you to bring a little taskmasterness. Whatever it is, I need somebody who's good at that to step up and take the lead for, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, until you start to get that groove back.
Perfect book for this day and age. It's hard to run a team when you're in the same office, more challenging when you're remote. You've given some great examples of how to start to bring those things together, and it's had me thinking as well, like just the differences, being aware of the differences. We forget quickly, we start using tools, how the tool is different compared to the tools we used to use, like talking to somebody in real time in physical space. It's like even looking at somebody on a video when there's 20 other videos in a boardroom, you would pick up so much more data in a fraction of a second by looking at real people in a room of 20 than you would, and you've got them all there on that screen. You would think that would be more data coming, but it's actually less data, but it's just the state of what we have. So very interesting take, and that's what we're faced with. That's what small businesses are faced with. There's so many benefits, as you mentioned. Who wants to commute? It's very efficient. It's great for team. It's a lot of benefit to it, but there's also those gaps that we have to figure out and somehow mitigate against. Mark, this has been great. You've got so much content. You've been doing this for so long, and it's really valuable. You could tell in this conversation just the depth of knowledge that you have in this space. If people wanted to learn more about you, if they wanted to pick up a copy of that book, you've got several other books You mentioned the one that preceded this one, which sounded quite good. And if you could name that book again, I forget exactly the title, but that sounded hiring for attitude.
Yep, exactly.
That, I think, for our listener would be great. And I will say, too, for our listener, we've had lots of great authors on our podcast. If that time of year is coming, you're gifting, you're thinking, what can I get for my star clients? They're all entrepreneurs. This is one of those books, Hiring for Attitude or 5 Critical Roles, as we've listened to on this podcast. Excellent book to put in front of your best clients to help them build better teams and grow their business. So I always love it when there's just that perfect connection, right? And our listeners are connected to so many business leaders and entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses. They're perfect audience to help bring some of this great work to that audience.
Yeah, they're essentially the connective backbone to, show me an organization that can run without a, bookkeeping and finance function, and I'll show you a business that is in serious trouble. So you can always find out more about us at leadershipiq.com. All of my books are there, and they're all listed there. There's also one thing I recommend too. There's a quizzes tab on our website. There's a team players tab, there's a quizzes tab, but there's a bunch of free quizzes. So you can actually take a team players quiz, and it's called like, what kind of team player are you? And you can go and you can have all your folks on your team take the quiz too. And, it's kind of a fun jump. All the quizzes are free. It's all there. And so just an easy, quick couple of minute way, sometimes to prompt a conversation and, allow you to kind of play with some of these ideas with your group real time.
Fantastic. Well, that's an excellent opportunity for our listener. And Mark, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure having you. And it was a fantastic conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure is all ours. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.